Hey guys, Joe at J Red Studios here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to make these festive holiday serving trays out of 4 basic woodworking tools and plywood templates I picked up at the local craft store. So stay tuned and check it out. Alright, so here's the idea. Picked up these 1/4-inch plywood blank decorations from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to use this as a router template to make some charcuterie boards and some serving trays out of some Paduke and some maple. May make one out of walnut or some cherry or something. We'll see how we feel. And then they also had these 10-inch circles. I think I'm going to use this, modify a little bit, and make ornaments out of it. I saw that some places do sell ornament templates like this stocking here. Couldn't get any locally. They wouldn't let me buy it online. So if you find that, I would go that route. But we're going to wing it and see what happens. So that's kind of the idea. Let's make some dust. First thing on our list of things to do is go ahead and make a panel that's going to be big enough to fit our template with a little bit of overhang. I'm going to be using some Paduke and maple for this stocking. I bought this a while ago. I think it was from Brockler Woodcraft. You can catch these kind of boards on sale and they're pretty inexpensive for these sizes. I think this was 3x36. It's a great way to get exotic hardwoods or just lumber in general that's already ready to use if you don't have access to milling tools or larger power tools. So once I got everything laid out and determined the size I need for my panel, just made a couple quick marks, and then we're going to go ahead and take it over to the table saw. Now if you don't have a table saw, you can use the miter saw. It works the exact same. All we're doing here is cross-cutting our pieces. So I'm using the cross-cut sled on the table saw. You can also use your miter saw, or you can even use a circular saw and a squared butted up against it as a straight edge. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and you really don't have to be very precise here. So you could even use a jigsaw. So this could be a 3-tool build if you didn't have access to any of these others. Before we glue up the panel, I just want to make sure that I actually cut off enough pieces. Now, if you're going to do this, I would make sure you have a piece of maple that's also long enough. It's a little bit more waste, but it makes life a lot easier when it comes time to the glue up. Now for this glue up, since it's going to be in contact with food and it's going to be getting washed regularly, you're going to want to use a waterproof glue. In this case, I'm going to be using Titebond 3. It's great for cutting boards, serving trays, anything that's going to be washed regularly because it's a waterproof glue. It's going to hold up a lot better. So spreading the glue on, using some clamps. When you're doing a panel glue up, it's always best to use some F-style clamps or just any clamps just to hold the seams of the boards together. This is going to help with alignment and help keep your panel flatter overall. If you don't have the F-clamps, it's not a big deal, but you might have more cleanup work to do in the end. So just keep that in mind. And you see, I'm not putting a lot of pressure on these boards. I'm just trying to get that nice B to squeeze out. So once I get everything lined up and clamped, I'm just going to go ahead and let that dry. Since we're making 2 of these, need to go ahead and get a second panel cut out. This was also some project boards that I got from Brockler Woodcraft. They've been sitting in my lumber rack forever. I believe these are belly, if I'm saying that correctly, and probably not. But these are going to make our ornament, and then I think we're going to go ahead and cut some thin strips of maple and walnut to weave through there, but we'll get to that when we get there. Just like with the Paduke on the stocking, we're going to go ahead and set a stop block and batch out a couple cuts to make our panel for the ornament. So just setting the stop block on my miter gauge, and then I'm going to be cross-cutting all these on the table saw. You don't need a stop block for this, like I said. As long as it's bigger than your template, you're fine. In case you're not noticing a theme here, I'm going to do the same thing for this ornament that I'm doing for the stocking, just making sure that the panel is big enough to fit the template. Just like the other panel, some Titebond 3 along the seams, F-style clamps, and then a little bit of pressure to get that nice squeeze out, and we're going to let these sit. Now Titebond 3 does take longer to cure than Titebond 2 or other glues. That is the one trade-off. So let these sit a little bit longer, at least an hour and a half and so in clamps before you go ahead and take them out. Once the panels are out of clamps, you just want to go ahead and scrape off any excess glue and give everything a nice sanding just to get everything nice and level. Just going to 120 grit here, nothing crazy, real quick sanding, just so that we'll have a flatter surface when it comes time to attach our template. With the panels glued up, now we just need to go ahead and place our template on there, just getting everything lined up how I'd like. And then I'm going to use a black Sharpie to get everything lined out. Now the black Sharpie is nice because it's going to give you a little bit thicker line when you go ahead and cutting everything with the jigsaw, or I'm also going to use a bandsaw on one of these. It just gives you a little bit more of a buffer, and then it's still plenty thin enough that when you go back with the router, you're not asking the router to take too much material off, bogging it down. Now for the ornament, I'm going to go ahead and get everything positioned and trace everything out. And I'm also going to use this time to go ahead and determine the kind of the shape that I want the maple strip to run through. I know I kind of want a little bit of a swoopy curve, so just kind of playing around with it till I find something I like, roughly tracing it on there. You don't want to go too crazy, especially if you don't have super thin material. It's just going to fight you, and it's most likely going to crack when you go to try to clamp it down. So I just clamped the blank down to the table, and then using the jigsaw, and I believe I was using a scroll saw blade here just because it's a fine tooth. Just went ahead and kind of generally followed the curves. Now, obviously this step is totally optional, but I think it does add a nice touch to this piece. So just like before, we're going to use some more Type on 3 and even more clamps than before. Now, if you do go to do this, you're going to need clamps from top and bottom and to the sides. And then you're going to want to take your time and make sure everything is as flat as you can get it. You don't want to put too much pressure on and cause any cupping or warping or anything like that. The flatter you can get it, the easier it'll be when it comes time to clean it up. So just keep that in mind as you tighten all your clamps down. You're going to want to go a little bit from each side until you get everything seated. Outside of using a jigsaw, you can also use a bandsaw. Now, if you find yourself having a bandsaw and not a jigsaw, weird flex, but okay. Same process, same concept. The jigsaw actually ended up going a little bit faster than the bandsaw, but the bandsaw was definitely more fun. And you don't need this tool, but if you have it, use it. So just like before, I'm gonna go ahead and cut as close to my line as I can get without going over. Now, like I said, you do have to the inside of that black line, but try and get it right to the outside of that black line. This will give you plenty of meat for the router, but not too much that it's gonna bog it down. To attach our template to our blanks, I'm gonna be using some double-sided carpet tape. I've used a bunch of different double-sided tapes in the past. This definitely has the most hold power, is easy to use, and is on the cheaper side. Don't go too crazy with it, especially if you want to reuse this template. If you put too much on, you're definitely likely to break your template getting it off. Start cutting our shape out. We're going to go ahead and use a templating bit. This one's made by Whiteside. I've only used it a little bit, but I do like it so far. So you're going to want to set your router bit where the bearing is on the template, and then the blade is on the actual wood. And if you don't have a super powerful router like this one, don't go super hard on your first pass. You're just going to bog it down, risk tear out or kickback. All can be dangerous and waste your time. So just take your time as you make your passes all the way around, and you'll be left with a partially cut out template. Once you've run the templating bit across, it's time to go ahead and switch to a flush trim bit. So this is a straight blade one, and then a compression bit. For the compression bit, it's too big to use in my palm router, so I'm going to use this router table. I recently made it, and this is the first project I got to use it on, so I was definitely super excited. Again, this can also be done in the palm router, which I'll do on the other one later on. But again, just take your time, don't go super heavy on the passes, and just be careful. All right, now let's see how we did. I'm using a putty knife to go ahead and carefully pry that template off. Like I said, don't go crazy on that double-sided tape or you're going to crack this template for sure. So just take your time and go all the way around, and it'll pop right off. Oh yeah. Off camera, I repeated the process for the walnut strip that you see in there. And then we're going to do the same thing. Go ahead, trace the template out, and cut the bulk off, and then get ready to go ahead and do some template routing. So here we go. Just like cutting the thin strips into the board, we're going to go ahead and use that jigsaw, clamp it to the table, and make our way around. While I finish cutting this out, I just want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing. I really hope you guys are enjoying this content I'm putting out. I'm having a lot of fun making it. So just want to say thank you. Also, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Next year? Come on, let's finish this year on a good note. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. All right, that's enough messing around. Let's get back to work. So back to getting the template placed back on with the double-sided tape, and then getting ready to route it all out. So just like the stocking, I went ahead with that template bit, went all the way around, and then I swapped over to my flush trim bit. Now my straight blade, I think it's a Bosch bit, is small enough that my router can handle it, but the con of straight blades, especially when you're routing through end grain, is you have a very high chance of tear out, which I did get a nasty chunk tear out on this one. But I was able to pick all the pieces up, I glued it back in, and then went back to the compression bit. And honestly, without looking, you're never gonna notice it. And if you do, quit looking that hard. What are you doing? It's like a decoration. Once I glued the piece back on, Went ahead and took a second swing at it. Brought it to the router table this time. Like I said, that compression bit is just a little too much for my little Ryobi palm router to handle. So just took my time and got everything trimmed up. Once all the routing was done, I went ahead and sanded both through the grits. So 120, 150, 180, and then 220. And then I used the pencil each time to keep track of my progress, not to sand too much in each spot. To soften all the edges, I just took an 1/8 inch round over bit and went over all the edges on both sides of both pieces. Just gonna soften everything up. You still have to touch it up by hand, but it makes it a lot more uniform and just come off a lot nicer overall. Since these are gonna be in contact with food, we need to make sure the finish we use is food safe. So just like a lot of cutting boards or any other charcuterie boards or serving trays, a go-to finish is mineral oil. You can also use like walrus oil and other things like that. I like mineral oil, it's inexpensive. You can even get it at like Walgreens and Walmart and stuff. I bought this big gallon jug on Amazon. And just like a lot of other finishes, you just rub it in, you let it soak in, and then after a little bit, you come back and buff it off. All right, and that's gonna be it for this one. 3 basic woodworking tools to get you some pretty cool holiday treats. Obviously, you can take this application and use it for whatever you want. You can have templates made, you can spend some time and hone and make your own for really whatever application you need. Just a cool way to show a crucial skill in the wood shop. Like I said, please like, comment, subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks again. I'll see you guys next time.